Hey, what is up, guys? Blaine Duncan here from Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers, joined by my brother, Austin Duncan. What is going on, man? Welcome to episode number 5.
Hey, man, good to be back. We've gotten so much love off the last one. Can't thank you guys enough. Really has been huge, and we're already kind of living sort of our dreams that we had with this podcast right off the bat. So it's been really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool to see just in the last, the last week, having received so many awesome comments and just so many people giving us encouraging for what, encouraging us for what we're doing, I should say. And I think that's so cool. I mean, it's so nice. And it goes back to what we talked about with the support of the podcast and support of horror fans. And it's fantastic to see that. So once again, thank you for Sandy Johnson last week coming on the show. It was fantastic talking to the original Judith Myers, and hopefully that won't be the last time, and we'll get her back on the program again. But this week we had some sad news, or this past week we had some sad news. George P. Wilbur, who played Michael Myers in Halloween Part 4 and Part 6, sadly passed away. You and I were fortunate enough back in 2016, we got the opportunity to meet him at a convention, and couldn't say enough good things about the guy. He was just really humble, down to earth, super cool to talk with. And I'm so thankful that we had that opportunity to do that now, knowing what was coming. So very, very sad. I think I remember having the conversation with him, and I told him, I said, you're my favorite Michael. And yes, Nick Castle is Michael Myers, right? I mean, there is no question Nick Castle is Michael Myers. He sets the bar, the standard. But there was something about the way that George moved, particularly in Part 6 for me, that I really liked. And I know a lot of people have a hard time with how he looked in that movie. His body shape, he was bigger, obviously, than any of the other, previous versions of Michael Myers that we had seen. But there was something about him that I love the way that he moved. And I remember telling him that when, he was sitting at his table and going up and asking him for his autograph. And I remember telling him that, man, you're my favorite Michael Myers. And his face lit up. And it was just like in that moment, we had that connection, and I think he truly appreciated the fans. A lot of support coming out here in the last week, and just a sad day for Halloween fans in general.
Totally. I will remember our time with him forever. It was the first convention I had ever been to, and it was I don't know if it was a 2 or a 3-day event, but I know every day we stopped by to talk to him a little bit and a little bit more. And by the end of the time, we were just kind of chatting just casually with him. And it was really cool to just kind of talk to him person to person. Really, really great guy. And it's definitely a sad time for the Halloween franchise fandom and horror in general. But yeah, I can't say enough good stuff about George. He was a wonderful Michael Myers. And definitely supplied. I mean, Halloween 4 landed top 3 for both of us.
Right.
Halloween 4 for me is kind of the quintessential, like, top tier Michael Myers. Just in the way, I mean, for the longest time we talked about having like Michael Myers hands with the veins and everything, and that was strictly images from Halloween 4 for me, and I'm sure you as well. But yeah, definitely a great loss in the community, but such a great guy, and I'm glad that his legacy will go on with these movies.
Absolutely. Yeah. And talking about his hands, that was actually, it's funny that you bring that up, because one of the things that I remember when I met him was I shook his hand, and I'm a fairly big person myself. I have fairly, big hands, and his hands like crushed my hand. I mean, his hands were just massive. And I remember that, meeting him and having that feeling. I was like, holy shit, Michael Myers just crushed my hand, but
yeah.
just a really cool dude. Like we said, just a huge loss for the horror community, the Halloween franchise community. And we'll obviously, we'll remember him and his role that he played in the series, and obviously bringing Michael back to the big screen, because after Halloween 2, that was sort of meant to be the end. So for George to bring that role back to the big screen, he did a great job, and he'll always be remembered as a fan favorite. And specifically for me, I absolutely loved the way that he moved, and like I said, Nick Castle is the shape, right? I mean, he embodies everything that there is to be about Michael Myers, and I don't think you can really compare anything to Nick. James Jude Courtney. This was pre-James Jude Courtney when we met George, but James Jude Courtney, again, great Michael Myers. But there was just something personally for me that I really enjoyed watching him on the screen, especially in H6. So yeah, very, very sad day, week for the fans in general. But we'll obviously remember him, and I'm sure we'll talk about him and mention him several more times throughout this podcast.
Oh yeah. There is without a doubt we will talk about George Wilbur for the rest of this podcast. I mean, he's synonymous with Michael Myers in this franchise. So
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. And it's interesting because the other thing real quick on George is he technically did appear in part 5. In the opening scenes, you saw the shots of him getting shot by the police and falling into the mine pit. So technically, George appeared in 4, 5, and 6, which is really cool. And I remember going to his Q&A and him mentioning that. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right, you did. So very, very sad for the community, but he'll be remembered for sure. So this episode, we've got a really fun episode lined up for you. We don't have a guest this week. We do have a guest next week. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. But this is going to be a fun episode where we actually go through and we rank our top 10 favorite kills from the franchise. And one thing that we sort of talked about, and I think it's really difficult to actually rank them as far as 10 to 1 or 1 to 10. So what we've done is we've just put together a list of 10 kills that we absolutely love from the franchise, and then picked out obviously our number 1 favorite that we'll share with everyone. So a lot of fun to go through and obviously sort of relive the series in a way, and try to remember and think of all the different kills that have happened. And there's been a lot of them. There's no question. There's a lot to choose from. And quite honestly, I almost had a more difficult time going through this list than I did even a few weeks ago when we ranked the franchise, because I think my mind had already been made up and I didn't necessarily look at the series in a whole and go, okay, what do I consider to be my top 10 favorite kills? So this was definitely, it was tough to do.
I agree. And I found myself going back to thank God for YouTube, because they've got sort of all the kills super cut together. Because it is, without rewatching all movies, it's kind of hard to go back, and there's a lot of off-screen deaths. There's all these different kills, and like you're saying, it's super hard to rank these 1 to 10 when they all kind of, at least on my list, they all kind of have different vibes to them that some I like for the brutality, some I like for the creativity. So yeah, I do have my favorite kill, but I've got 9 other amazing kills on here, and I'm sure our lists will have some overlap.
We will. Yeah. And I was thinking about that too. Like there's just going to be that's going to happen because we don't know. This is the first time we'll be sharing our lists with each other. So it'll be just as much of a surprise for each other as anybody who's listening or watching this. So, well, let's get into it. I started out the list when we did the franchise ranking or the movie ranking. Why don't you go ahead and hit me with one of your top 10 favorite kills from the Halloween franchise?
So this one, I'm going to go right off the bat, and it's very much a follow-up from last week. I got to put the Judith Myers first-person point of view kill from the original John Carpenter 1978 film. It's the only time in the original canon that you see young Michael Myers kill, and I think it's still one of the best shots in that movie, the continuous shot. Now, I've heard actually recently doing some research that There were cuts in that shot, like when Michael slips on the mask and they did a little movie magic there. Either way, that shot is amazing and incredible. And I love the tone it sets for the movie, because right off the bat, you're introduced to this character that flipped a switch. And that's what I've talked about before, is one of my favorite things about Michael Myers is he was one way and then he became the shape at random. So yeah, the Judith Myers scene right at the beginning of the original movie, shout out Sandy Johnson, wonderful kill.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I mean, it set the tone for the entire franchise, and when I look at that as, somebody who's viewing that for the first time, and even though I remember watching Halloween for the first time, I remember actually doing it. I don't necessarily remember specific scenes or how I felt about, my reaction necessarily to specific scenes, but I think about how crazy that must have been to be watching that in the theater and to see this girl get brutally murdered on the screen, and then for it to be this little boy. And because you wouldn't have thought that was going to be the case. And to your point, like, it just, nobody would have ever guessed that it was going to be that, and that, that it was this kid that would then eventually 15 years later do what he did to Judith. He's going to do it all over again. So yeah, it's a great kill. Talking a little bit about that, I think it was called the Panavision, the glide camera. Very, obviously very highly advanced for that era. It hadn't been used much before that. And I think you're right. John Carpenter actually said in several interviews, I believe it, that at some point there's a cut in there. And I don't know that he may have come out and said when it was, but I've always kind of thought the same thing, that it had to have most likely been when the mask got slipped on, because just naturally it would have been sort of a cut to black moment that they were able to then piece that together. But just a great scene, definitely a good kill, and obviously an awesome person who played Judith on top of all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that I think about with that kill, and using sort of a new technology is sort of something you see now with young filmmakers or indie filmmakers, as they're pushing new technology to the forefront, and being a little bit more creative with their camera work. And I think showing that shot at the very beginning of the movie was done very purposely to show how seriously to take this sort of low budget horror movie.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. Yeah, most definitely. No, great pick, man. I totally agree with that. It's an awesome scene in the movie, and obviously helped kick the franchise off. I am going to go, I'm going to think big picture here. Okay. So we are the podcast of Michael Myers. However, one of my favorite deaths from the entire franchise comes from a movie that Michael Myers is not even in, and that's Halloween 3. And I'm talking about the scene with Marge Gutman when she is in the hotel room, and she's got the silver shamrock, the little coin looking thing that's on the back of the masks, and she's messing around with it, and she sees it on the floor, and she picks it up, and she's takes her, her bobby pin or whatever it is, and she starts messing around with it on the bed, and the freaking laser beam shoots out of it and hits her right in the face. And that whole scene is, in my mind, like, it's such number one, it's such an awesome kill, but the fact that they were so visual and there was so much gore with that scene was crazy, especially for that era. And we were having, obviously more practical effects at that time. There wasn't CGI and things like that. So this was this death scene with her face like ripped open and her mouth all mangled and the bugs coming out of it. It was just so cool. I mean, every time I watch that movie, I have to stop and watch it, because it hits me in a way that a lot of other kills don't. And no matter what I'm doing, if I'm really only paying attention to the movie or whatever it might be, that's one of those scenes where I always have to stop and watch it. And the funny part is that is actually Tom Atkins. That's his wife, or now ex-wife, in real life. That's plays Marge. And the funny part about that scene is, obviously, in the movie, Dr. Chalice and Ellie are in the room next door getting it on, while Marge is there messing around with the little chip or the coin. So I love that one. And immediately when I was thinking about all the kills, you obviously, you tend to think about the Michael Myers kills, but it's a fantastic scene in my mind and a great death in this series.
You bastard. I was coming in and I was like, oh, he's not going to pick anything from Halloween 3 because I've got one too. But I was like, oh, I'm going to drop this one. But yeah, no, absolutely. That was one of them that I was considering too. It didn't make my list, but the practical effects in that movie are just awesome. I love Halloween 3, and I'll actually kind of piggyback off that one with mine from Halloween 3, which is Buddy Jr. When we finally get to see what the mask can do, and it's very similar in the practical effect realm, with the bugs coming out and the acid and the ooze. I just love that, and it's kind of when I think of Halloween 3, I go back to that to that kill.
Right. That's an awesome one too. And I mean, obviously that's probably the most iconic death or, death scene in that movie, because it's just, it's obviously it's a kid, it's tough to watch as it is, but it's probably the most famous or iconic death of that film. And yeah, you're right. Having all the bugs and the snakes and all the shit, coming out of the mask, it's definitely a cool scene. And, how horrific too, that it's happening in front of the parents. And there's, and what's crazy about that scene to me is like, he knows something is going on because he immediately reaches up and he starts like pulling on the mask. And it's almost as if as he have a headache, is what's going on. You're trying to figure it out. And that song and that tone is just getting faster and faster and faster and faster. And as that's happening, he's turning into mush basically. I don't know if you remember this, but I was actually buddy for a costume at a convention, probably 8 years ago or so. And I had the gray hooded sweatshirt and the mask, and I had bugs that I had put all over it, and had a snake coming out of one of the eye. And then I one of the eyes. And then I had taken green ooze and, poured it out of the eyes and down the front of the shirt. And I had a lot of reaction to it. It was a great costume.
Yeah, I do remember that. And I was actually going to bring that up. Is that anywhere in your horror room right now? Like, do you have that on display, or is that still around anywhere?
Yeah, I still have it. It's not on display, but I should put it on display. I never even thought of that, but I do have, the H3 masks right here. You can't see the pumpkin, but I do have all the H3 masks, and it's just a great movie. But you're right. I should definitely display that one, because it's cool, because it's got the cockroaches all over it, and the snakes and things like that, and the green ooze. So, it's a great scene and a great pick. So I'll keep it going. I'm seeing here's where I'm gonna have to try to keep things in order, because mine are so out of order that I should have probably put them actually in some sort of order, but they're not by movie, not by year, not by anything. It's just I'm just bouncing all over the place. So, okay, awesome. So one of my favorite deaths comes in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, and that is the scene where you have the I don't know if he's a bouncer, the strip club bouncer, or what he is. He goes to take the trash out, and he's outside, and he's going up to the dumpster, and there is Michael Myers, who's played by Tyler Mane, obviously in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, and he's obviously immediately like taken back. He's because there's this giant 6'9" dude, or however tall Tyler Mane is, standing there in front of him, and he acts like the tough guy. He's sort of telling them, like, he even says something about, hit the bricks, Dorothy. And he's talking about how he sent somebody to the hospital earlier that night. And he really just trying to be a tough guy, a macho guy, even though the shadow of Tyler Mane is just completely cast over him, because it's just that version of Michael was so big. And, I think if I remember correctly, he goes to take punch or a swing at Michael Myers, and Michael stops him and then grabs him and he throws him to the ground, throws Jeff Daniel Phillips, the actor, he throws him to the ground, and then he stomps on his freaking head. And that was done again in Halloween 2018, where Michael does that same exact kill, but I just thought it was so shocking. And then he I think he does it a couple times, and obviously with it being a very gory, graphic Rob Zombie film, they're showing it as it's happening. I mean, they're showing the character of Jeff Daniel Phillips, his skull literally being crushed by Michael Myers's 17-inch boot that he's got that keeps coming down on top of his head. And I love that scene. I don't know why, because there's so many obviously death scenes throughout Rob Zombie's films, but that one always stood out to me as a favorite.
I in my most recent, this past October, in my last watch of the series, that was a scene that really stood out to me too, because you usually have Michael sort of going up against somebody who's terrified of him, at least showing. I'm sure this character was terrified, but it is kind of interesting. It takes me back to like Jason Takes Manhattan with the guy who's ready to box Jason.
Right.
It is kind of interesting to see when characters are sort of willing to go up against Michael, and you see that again in Rob Zombie's 2 movies with Joe Grizzly. Mm-hmm. And it is kind of cool to see that. And then just to immediately be like, okay, this is a tough guy in our world. But when it comes to fighting Michael Myers, there's just no chance. So yeah, that scene really stuck out to me, my most recent watch as well. And I think, say what you want about the Rob Zombie films, but the brutality of Michael Myers in those movies is almost completely unmatched. I mean, we've got some really brutal kills in the David Gordon Green trilogy, and obviously some peppered throughout the original few films. But yeah, man, those Rob Zombie films are seriously they're brutal.
Well, and I think, Sandy Johnson talked about it last week, that she hasn't seen those because they are very gory and very graphic. And even though, going back to our ranking of those movies, in my ranking, both of those movies fall towards the very end of my ranking as far as the back half. Still like them. They're still great. They're Halloween movies. I'll watch them every single year. But Rob Zombie just does have a weight of taking things to an absolute extreme with that gore and the violence and things like that. And yeah, this scene obviously was no different.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I'm going to follow that one up with something pretty gory, but not quite to that extreme. And that is Sarah's death in Halloween H2O. She is the poor soul who gets her leg broken and snapped in the laundry chute, and then eventually crawls to meet her doom with Michael Myers. And I've always loved that whole scene, because she obviously finds her dead boyfriend in the laundry chute, and she's forced to then get in that laundry chute snuggled up with her dead gory boyfriend, and then finally Michael cuts the cord, it slams on her leg, she breaks her leg, and she has to slowly crawl. I just think of sort of the shittiest scenarios to be in any of the films, and that's really up there for me. I'm a big H2O guy, and that's easily my favorite kill from that movie.
It's funny because that was on my list like 2 days ago, and it was removed. It was taken off by another kill that I'll talk about here in a little bit. But if I had my top 10, that was number 11. I mean, it was on my list. It's a great scene. It's a fantastic scene. And to your point, I mean, not the way that you would want your death in any of those movies to go. Very, the scene where she gets her leg crushed is disgusting. I mean, you see the bone and obviously the blood, but then I also just the way that, later on when Josh Hartnett's character and Michelle Williams, her character, when they find Sarah. She's hanging in the closet with the light flickering, and it goes back to something that I have always appreciated and enjoyed about Michael's kills throughout the franchise. And he's done this in several of the movies where he almost has like a playful, some sort of like a playfulness of the way that he creates his kills. And in this case, Sarah is no different, where she's hanging there, and it's a shocking scene. And that obviously sets off sort of the third act, I guess, of H2O, where, they now realize that Michael has come back. He's come back to Northern California, and he's there to find Lori, or your Miss Tate, I guess, as she's known in Carrie Tate, as she's known in the film. So it's a great scene and a great pick. Like I said, it was number 11 on mine, and it just got knocked off by one that I kind of thought of as I was putting the list together, and finally had to knock it off the list. I'm gonna go with a kill from Halloween 5. And this is actually, I'm going to cheat a little bit. This could be a double, because it's a scene that realistically it's if I were to rank these these kills, this is one that probably is in my top 3. And I'm talking about the scene with Samantha, Sam, and Spitz, where they go into the barn, they're getting ready to bump uglies, and that obviously Michael is he's in the barn, right, and he's stalking them. You see him off in the distance and moving about the barn, and then when they're actually getting it on, Michael comes up with the pitchfork and he freaking jams it into the back of Spitz. And what an awesome kill. We had seen a similar kill in in the original Friday the 13th, when a couple is doing the exact same thing and they get stabbed through the back. But this is just very brutal. And what I love about that scene too is not only does Michael stab Spitz in the back, but then he just like walks away, which is crazy. Like you see him, he does it, and he just kind of like walks away, and it's like, what is he doing? And obviously Spitz is dead. Sam gets up and she starts moving about, and she tries to fight Michael off, and he then her death is obviously off screen. You don't see it. You just see the blood splash across the hay in the barn. But just an awesome scene. I love it. It has just such a even outside of like the Halloween franchise, just a really good Halloween season vibe to it. They're in this old rustic barn, and they're at this party out at the Tower Farm, and it's just a great scene. Always one that I've enjoyed. And like I said, if I were to actually rank these, this would be for sure top 5, probably top 3.
Yeah, I think the imagery in all of the barn scenes in H5 are some of my favorite. It is very Friday the 13th now that you mention it, but I love seeing Michael with the scythe or with the pitchfork. It's something when you think of the Haddonfield Huskers, that sort of old farm town vibe that Haddonfield is supposed to be. It is really cool to see Michael kind of use more obscure tools than just the butcher knife. And I think that might have been my number 11 that got knocked off, because that was absolutely one I was thinking of when I put together this list.
Awesome.
For me, the next one I want to bring up is Ismail in Halloween 2007. And that is Michael's bodyguard that has been taking care of him since he was a kid. He calls him Mikey. And when he finally reaches the escaped prisoner, Michael Myers, he's like, Mikey, let me put these cuffs back on you. Like, every time I watch this scene, I'm like, please let it turn out differently than I know it will, because
Right.
It is so sweet to see this guy who's been taking care of Michael, and you see him earlier. He's like, we understand each other, all this, and you're starting to think maybe in this version of Rob Zombie's story, we'll see this character show a little bit of empathy, but no, he freaking
He's brutal.
kills Ismail, and he's going, "I was good to you, Mikey," and it's probably one of the most like emotional kills for me watching in these movies, to feel like somebody who probably maybe the only person in the entire series outside of maybe Dr. Sartain to show Michael any empathy at all throughout the franchise. To see Michael just treat him like anybody else, it's absolutely heartbreaking, and in true Rob Zombie fashion, it's brutal. He gets smoked in the head with a TV, and drowned. The drowning scene is hard to watch. I love this kill. It's one that I hate so much I love it, I guess is how I would put it.
Yeah, it is a good one, and you're totally right. Like there's this expectation, I guess, of empathy, and you're like, there's no way. I mean, this guy was taking care of Michael. He was being good to him in the sanitarium, and no, not at all. He treats him just like any other victim, and that whole scene, just in general, of like Michael breaking out. There's obviously the graphic rape scene that happens there, and Michael has enough of that shit, and he kills both those guys, and then you have this scene of, there's no way he's going to kill this guy. There's no way. And brutal. He didn't think twice about it, No. And I do love that, as we talked about, where with Tyler Mane, he did bring a brutality to Michael that we've not seen at any other time. I mean, we saw a little bit of it in Halloween 6 with George P. Wilbur. We saw some of it with James Jude Courtney in the David Green trilogy, but there was a whole nother level there. And I couldn't agree more, man. That's a great pick. Didn't make my list, but it is one of those that it absolutely is a brutal kill. I'm gonna, as long as we're on the Rob Zombie topic or bandwagon here, let's go. I'm gonna go to another Halloween 2 kill from Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And it's the scene where Michael this is hillbilly Michael, or not hillbilly Michael, but he's homeless Michael, whatever you want to call him, right? I mean, he's been out now for a year. He's walking through this field at night, and you see this pickup truck pull up, and you hear these people talking in the pickup truck about this guy. They told him to stay away. They told him to get out of here, and they come out of the truck and they beat the shit out of them, right? It's these two hillbillies, and I don't know if it's one of their daughters or girlfriends, or whoever it is that's in the truck with them. I think it's one of their daughters, because I think she says dad or daddy. And they beat the living shit out of Michael. And there's this whole scene where, and I don't remember if it's in slow motion or not, but I think it is, where the headlights are shining directly at the camera, and you get where Michael sort of just sits up on his knees and he puts the mask on, and you're just like, oh, he is gonna fuck some people up. Like, this is the moment we have been waiting for. And you wanted those people to die. You were like, you wanted him to kill those people. And that's where he takes out that big ass like Bowie knife, and he freaking goes to town, and he kills all three of them. And then he also does something where he runs the blade of the knife along the dog kennel, which is just this sort of taunting, toying of with this animal. It just, again, it goes to show the brutality that Tyler Mane brought to that character in H1 and H2. And just a scene that I love. It's just, because these guys go out there and they think they're going to beat the shit out of this dude. And he absolutely has the last laugh. And I love it.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I think they say something kind of like, hey, I've told you this before, you get off my land. Sort of showing that Michael has been around this area, maybe building up the strength. And we've talked about how maybe the Halloween season is what sort of gives him that strength. So now he's ready to put an end to him. Yeah, dude, I love that scene. Another thing I'll say about the Rob Zombie movies is there's a lot of just like realistic, how would the most random person in the world deal with this situation, and to see him kind of interact with these hillbilly farmers is really cool. And he doesn't show anybody any restraint. Even the daughter, who I believe in that scene is going, hey, he's had enough, like let him be. And it doesn't matter. He doesn't show empathy to anybody.
Merciless. I mean, yeah, he's just absolutely merciless, you know, because you're right. She goes over to him and she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And nope.
Doesn't matter.
Yep, nope. I love it.
For me, I'm going to go, and I've actually got 2 of these, so I'm glad that you did one of these as well. This sort of double feature that I'm going to count as one is the Bob and Linda scene from the original 1978 classic. It's so interesting to see, and you only really see it, I believe, off the top of my head, again in H6, where you see Michael in a costume other than Michael Myers. When he walks
H5.
Yeah. H5. Yeah. Sorry. Yep. With the big, I don't even know what to call that mask.
Right.
But yeah, so that scene of Michael walking in with the sheet and the glasses, I love it. It's such an iconic moment in the franchise. And that's obviously how he gets Linda. But before that, when he kills Bob, and you get your first instance of Michael impaling somebody to the wall where their legs are dangling, and maybe one of the first times you do see that like childlike wonder in how he kills people, that sort of creativity that you sort of go, oh, right, the last time this guy was free, he was a kid. So he's kind of thinking about things a little bit more fun in the most sick sense. I love that whole few minutes there with Bob and Linda. And that is one thing, again, I'll give credit to with the Rob Zombie movies, is they follow it almost beat for beat. It's a perfect recreation in my mind. I love that sequence of events in Halloween.
I agree, and I actually so the Bob's death is also I'll just do that one next on my list. I did have them have them separate as thinking of them as 2 different kills, but you're right, obviously that they go back to back with each other, and specifically with Bob's death, I love the fact that it's this. You sort of know it's coming because she says, "Get me a beer," and he goes, he marches his ass downstairs and he goes to get her a beer, and it's coming because you know it's coming, right? And then all of a sudden he turns around and he thinks somebody's messing with him, and Michael just comes out and he frickin' slams him to the wall, and then he stabs him, and then just you get that iconic that head turn. And I don't know. And this would be a great question to ask. And I'm sure he's answered it before. I don't know if that was direction given to him by John Carpenter to do that, or if that was just sort of an improv thing, but it's this, like you said, admiration. You see dogs do it, like almost a confusion, I mean, there's just, it was just so cool. Like he was standing back and looking at, I just mounted this guy to the wall like a painting, and it's such a great death, and obviously just that whole series or that whole scene in general is awesome.
And I just gotta say before we move on, when he kills Linda, and he's listening to Laurie on the other side of the telephone, unreal scene. Love that part of the movie as well, and there's callbacks to that with Halloween Kills. And obviously other movies in the franchise, but I love that little bit as well.
Well, and that scene that's really the first time that we truly get to see Michael's face or the mask up close, because prior to that you're seeing just very quick shots or shots that are happening in the distance where Michael's just sort of in the background, and so that is you're totally right. When he picks up the the handheld and he's holding it, and he hears Laurie on the other end. It's a great scene, and just the lighting and the shadows that play off of that mask in that scene, it's super cool.
And they set up that one very well earlier with Linda I believe it's Linda on the other end of the phone earlier in the movie, sort of teasing Lori over the phone as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know, you can understand why she might think it's a joke as well.
Right. Yep. Totally. Yeah. Well, we kind of doubled up there. So go ahead and you go next.
All right. So the next one I got to do is one of my favorites in the series that shows how sort of void of any real human feeling that Michael has is H2 1981. Michael killing the nurse Karen in the extremely unregulated hot tub.
Yeah.
Obviously he kills the other nurse in the background. I forget his name right off the bat.
Yeah, the paramedic. Yep.
And then he cranks that knob and you see it go to like whatever unrealistic degree it goes to, whatever. But he goes in and he's just slamming her through there, and her face is boiling. His hands are in there too. He does not care. I love that scene. And it's one of the first times you see this elevated. We've talked about it a lot, but the brutality of Michael Myers. H1, you sort of get this stalker Reaper that comes in with the quick kills, gets it done nice and easy. And in H2, he kind of takes his time a little bit and lets things get a little bit more messy. And that's one of the first instances in that film that you really get to see like, oh shit, he's like pissed off this time around.
Yeah, I agree that it didn't make my list, but I thought about this one long and hard that it's a totally brutal scene, as you mentioned, and so Bud is the paramedic, and he's the one who you see get killed in the background, and I think he gets strangled. You just sort of see like the silhouette of Michael and Bud struggling, and I always kind of laugh a little bit about that because the acting in that death scene is very similar to when Annie dies in the car in 1978. It's almost like it just ends very quickly. They go from struggle to Bud just literally collapses. Like it's just, and maybe I guess I've never strangled somebody, so I can't say necessarily how that would go, but it doesn't seem like it was done very well. But yeah, great scene. The thing that always gets me about that whole death scene and what leads up to it is, Karen, she gets out of the hot tub or whatever the hell that thing is, and she's sitting there and she's getting her towel on her or whatever, and Michael comes up behind her and puts his hand on her shoulder, and it's this nasty ass, like gnarly, gross, there's dirty hand, and she starts sucking on his fucking thumb, and it's like, did you not like taste the blood of like the other 9 people that he killed before that, and like the dirt under his fingernails and shit like that? It's just I just laugh, and she's just going to town on his thumb, and then he pulls it away, and then she obviously realizes what's going on, and it's game over. But that scene always makes me laugh because it's like, God damn, like you couldn't have told me that tasted like clean human skin, just gross. So that's a great scene, and like you mentioned, really the first time that we saw that brutality in the first few films. So yeah, that's definitely a good pick. I'm going to take us to Halloween 6, and when I talk about top 3, this one might be top 3 for sure, top 5. But it is the Deborah Strode scene, and I'm sure you thought I was going to go somewhere else with it, but this is the Deborah Strode kill. I love this scene for so many different reasons. And number one, I just love how the scene is set up, because Deborah gets on the phone and she calls her shitbag husband, and she is saying to him, they're living in the Myers house, and she's saying to him over the phone, I know why you got this house so cheap. You moved us into this house. I know why you got this house, such a good deal in this house. And in the background, you see Michael Myers, and it's just very, very reminiscent, I guess, of the Annie scene from the first film, where she's out in the little, I don't know what you want to call it, the laundry little wash house that's in the backyard of the house, and she's doing her laundry, and she's on the phone, and Michael is standing behind her, outside, and I love the setup of that. And prior to that, she had this axe, and she had set it down and brought it in a bin and set it down, and all of a sudden she realizes that the axe is gone, and she knows somebody's in the house with her, and you don't actually see Michael necessarily giving chase to her, but he's after her, and she knows that it's Michael, and she's she runs through the house, she goes outside, runs into the backyard, and there, within the bed sheets that are drying, she trips and falls down. Her glasses fall off, and Michael, the bed sheets blow, and there's Michael. He's got the freaking axe, and he winds up and just in the most brutal way just comes down and just whacks her. And again, you see the blood streak fly across the sheets. I love that scene. There's another death scene in that movie that I probably made your list. It made my list, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit. But it's my favorite kill out of that movie, because it's just, there's something about it, just that realization of holy shit, they're living in the Myers house, and then they have that struggle, and she goes to the backyard and she gets whacked. I think it's so cool, so well done.
I've talked before about how H6 has some of the best visuals in the series, and I think that shot of Michael standing over her with the axe and then given that swing is it reminds me a lot of the machete chop down between the legs of Friday 3. I just love that first person view shot of this person's last thing they see in this world, and it's I love that, and I know what you're talking about coming up, and that actually did not make my list, but that is a great kill, so I'll be happy to talk about that one.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's good to know. For
me, the next one will be another double feature. This one's a little bit more together than Bob and Linda, and that's Big John and Little John in Halloween Kills. It's another example of Michael being creative with the kills in the way that he sets them up at the end to match the picture on the wall. I just love that whole scene, and it's very similar to that scene you were just talking about in H6, where it's the characters of Big John and Little John are some of the best in that trilogy. I love how they're aware that they're living in the Michael Myers house, but they've kept it up. It's very realistic to what would happen today if there was a murderer murders in a house. It wouldn't just be condemned for the rest of time. People would eventually fix this thing up, and it would become maybe a legend in that city. But this is the most realistic take I've seen of it. And it's really cool how, they're playing tricks on the kids, but then eventually Michael is the one doing the real damage. And I believe it's Little John who says, "Michael, you came home." And I as cheesy as the writing is in that movie, and maybe that line falls under that cheesiness, that one gives me goosebumps to watch. And I love that vibe of that whole scene.
I totally agree, man. That is those two characters in that film are that whole kind of segment throughout that movie when we are back at the Myers house, and Big John, Little John, they get the trick-or-treaters who come to the door and they say their friend had a razor blade in the candy, and then they leave the house and then the door gets slammed, and really it's just the kids playing a trick on them, and then they tell the whole story of Judith Myers. That is so cool, because I love the fact that, number one, we've gone back to the Myers house. I love the fact that it's, the house is now a part of the community again. It's not like it's just this rundown, shambled, mess of a house. That it's back in the, it's back in the as a part of the community again. I love that they did that. My biggest gripe about that whole thing, and it just is what it is, and this was a little before your time, so it probably doesn't affect you the way that it affects me, but Little John, and I forget the actor's name, but he's Stuart from Mad TV. Now, I grew up watching Mad TV. That was a huge show for me when I was, like early teens. And I when I see him, I can't see anything except for Stuart. And so that was tough for me to watch that. I wish maybe they had cast somebody else to do that, even though he did a fantastic job. I'm not complaining about, the what he did in the film. But it's like anything else, right? When you have this iconic, no different than really Jamie Lee Curtis. When I see a movie with, like Christmas with the Cranks, right? I see Laurie Strode. I'm sorry. I do. I see Laurie Strode as in a Christmas movie. And I can't, you can't unsee some of that stuff. And that's a little bit how I felt with Little John. Great death scene. I loved, again, how Michael sort of positioned them in the way that photo of them is shown. He positioned them in the same exact way that they posed in that photo that's in, I think it's their bedroom or whatever room he kills them in.
Yeah.
But yeah, great death scene for sure.
Yeah, I forgot about the Mad TV thing. I think the only time we've talked about that is on the car ride home from our first watch of Halloween Kills. Yeah,
probably so. It was tough for me to, it was tough for me to look past, but I can do it. It was a great scene, no doubt. My next one is I think I might be stealing one from you just because I know how much you love this, but I'm going to say it anyway. It is the from Halloween Ends, the DJ death scene. Did that make your list?
That was my number 2.
Okay.
If I had to rank them, but yes, no, I'll be happy to talk about this.
Yeah. So just number one, that DJ was an asshole, right? I mean, just throughout the movie, just the arrogance and you weren't pulling for him in any sense. A lot of times you see with these victims, I talked about Deborah Strode in my last pick, like she was just an innocent kind of older lady, I mean, you kind of start to feel and develop feelings for these characters and you're like, man, what did she do? What did she do wrong? The DJ, that dude's a prick. And I was not sad to see him get killed off in the movie. But what I thought was so fantastic was just how again, the brutality. Now, the asterisk is obviously that this is not Michael killing the DJ, right? This is Corey killing the DJ, and so we do have to throw that in there that this was not a Michael Myers kill, that this was a Corey kill, which is fine. It's still part of the series, which we're ranking everything. But the way he cuts the tongue off and it like flops around on the turntable, and the needle is bouncing, every time the tongue goes past. It's a fantastic scene. I honestly thought that the radio tower, based on some of the information that we had heard leading up to Halloween Ends, I thought the radio tower was going to play more of an impact in the movie. I actually had heard some fan theories that the radio tower was the reason why Michael was why he was the way that he was somehow controlled, mind control through the radio tower. Glad they didn't go down that road.
Big time.
But I it's obviously cool. Then at the end of the movie, you see the radio tower burning, and just a fantastic kill. So yeah, obviously I stole that one from you a little bit, but hit me with it because it's a fun scene to talk about.
Dude, so it's not Michael Myers, but it might as well be. The way that Corey acts, and it almost made me, when I was watching it, go, are they going to make a connection about once you put on the mask, you are Michael Myers? I'm glad that they left that up to interpretation, but the way he walks past the window, everything in that shot, it might as well be Michael Myers. It was Michael Myers to a T. He didn't do anything Corey-esque. He did it all the way the shape would. So I watched that scene. I would put it right in the middle of a supercut of all Michael's kills, and it would fit in just fine. I love that scene so much. It was one of the best kills in that new trilogy. And so brutal. I mean, him snipping the tongue, it was like, oh man, it really makes you cringe. Very, very few things like that. We've kind of been desensitized to this shit through the movies we've watched, but I think of like the Evil Dead remake with the syringe going through the eye, and very few times I'm like, oh man, this is hard to watch, but that was absolutely one of them. Loved it, and the sick humor of it going around on the turntable is awesome, man. I love it. It's a chef's kiss for me. I think it's a perfect Michael Myers kill, even if it's Corey under the mask.
And the thing that I kind of like, the interesting part in my mind, and I don't know if they necessarily did this on purpose or if I'm just drawing different conclusions here, but that DJ was obviously talked a lot of shit on the radio, and it's kind of like he when he cut his tongue out, it's like he's silencing that, like that's he's saying you will never do this again, even though he was obviously going to be dead anyway. But he took that ability to be a shit talker away from him, and just a fantastic, absolutely a fantastic kill scene, and one that it's for sure my favorite out of Halloween Ends. It's my favorite kill. So how many do you have left? Are we down to? I have 3 left on my list.
All right. Let me check. I've got 1, 2. I've got 2, but it's because of Willie the Kid.
Okay, so let me. I'll hit you with this one. It's we kind of referenced it earlier, but going back to Halloween 6, the surgical the death scene in Halloween 6 when Michael grabs that big goddamn knife that I don't know what they were using, what kind of surgery they were doing, but he grabs that big bladed knife and he walks in. And he just starts absolutely annihilating every member of the surgical team, nurses, doctors, whatever. And you're getting, the flashing, the strobe effect as he's doing it. People are slamming against the glass. Blood is splattering everywhere. You're seeing just bits of him moving about the the operating room. And dude, it's just every time I see it, I am like, that is sweet. And it was tough for me because there were other kills in Halloween 6 that I really, really liked. I think in general, even though only two specific scenes made my list from this movie, in general, I think the kills in Halloween 6 are personally my favorite. If I had to just pick one movie that I really love, all the kills, and that includes Halloween Kills, which has a plethora of kills. I really, really like just what they did in H6, the practical effects and everything else. I just thought it was fantastic. But such a cool scene. Brutality. We've said that word 1,000 times. If you're taking shots every time we say brutality, you're freaking drunk by now. It is just a brutal scene. And it just goes to show that Michael Myers was pissed off and he was taking it out on these people. And it was just, I love it.
I think that scene is done so much better to me than the angry mob scene in Halloween Kills. If you want to show Michael take out a group of people, this is the shot, or this is the scene for me, versus, Aunt Helen with her toaster or whatever the hell she has.
The hockey. Somebody's got a hockey stick,
dude. And then it I've got problems with the end of that movie in general. I just don't enjoy it. But dude, I think it's one of the best showings of Michael's power and this rampage he goes on. And yeah, absolutely. And that's a really interesting what you said about Halloween 6. Maybe having the best deaths as a movie. I might have to agree with you. The way the father dies in that movie is awesome.
That one was on my list also, and that was tough. Like that one definitely. That one was maybe even tied for number 11 because because number one, like the DJ or like a few other characters, you want that dude to die. He's an asshole. And the way he's like, he gets slammed into, the electrical box and he's freaking shaking and the foam is coming out of his mouth and you see the light flashing through the window from the outside. Just a gnarly death scene.
I actually thought that was the kill that you were referring to from H6. So very interesting because that was one that almost made my list.
Yeah, we'll have to try to get Daniel Ferens on the show at some point to just talk to him about all those deaths and which ones he came up with versus which ones were added later on. And like I said, it's one of those movies, or it's probably the movie, if I had to pick the best kills, it's probably at the top of my list for me. So what do you got, man? You're down to 2. What's number 2, or what's your second from last, I guess?
So the last one I'll mention before my all-time favorite kill, and I'm going to be honest, my number 1 is maybe cheating a little bit because it's sort of a sequence, and that might be a big hint. But the last one that I'll bring out individually would be Gary the Coroner from H2 2009. He's another one where you're like, okay, I'm cool if this guy dies. Right. He sucks a lot. He's talking about how he wants to bang a dead body of a underage girl. Right. Not sure which part is worse, the underage or the dead part. Mm-hmm. But all the way around, just like a super totally Rob Zombie cliche, gross redneck piece of trash. And I don't think I've ever heard the word fuck so many times repeatedly in a movie. But it makes sense. It's probably very realistic to what a lot of people say right after a car accident. So they hit the cow because they're not paying attention because they're horrible humans. And yeah, I mean, he's just completely smashed up. He's bleeding from the mouth, and it's this black, old, dried blood kind of coming out. And then it is sort of the scene where you realize Michael is back. I mean, it's no surprise to anybody who's purchased a ticket for this movie, but the truck starts rumbling, and then you see his boots come down onto the ground, and he
kicks around. The door open. The door flies open. Yeah.
And he grabs the dude and he busts the broken glass and he just saws his head off. And it's like we talked about with the head stomping scene from that movie. It's all there. There's no cutaway to sort of save the rating. And of course there are unrated versions of these films. But God, man, that one more time, because I don't know if I'll use it for my final one. Brutal. It is a brutal kill, and love it, man. Are you there? All right, we just had technical difficulties going on with that last one there. Not sure if Michael slammed somebody into our electrical box, but shit went down. We're back. It's all good. I was just talking about Gary the Coroner getting his freaking head sawed off by Michael with a broken shard of glass.
Yeah.
And just yeah.
Oh, no, what I was going to say, like, the thing that was so really disgusting about that scene for me was when he's sawing. I mean, it sounds like you're cutting through a piece of meat. Like, clearly whoever was running the sound effects knew what they were doing, and you're getting that grinding, tearing noises, and he's going through bone and shit. And it was just like, Jesus, like terrible, terrible, but a fantastic death scene. And like you said, you want that dude, you want both, the one dude he's dead already. The other guy is he gets his head cut off, but you don't like either one of those guys at all. So that's a great pick. And I actually never even thought about that one, but bad. Like that was super bad, bad. I'm gonna go to Halloween 2018. It's the only kill that made my list from 2018, and it's the fence scene with Oscar. And I love that scene for so many reasons. I think what I love most about it is not necessarily even the death, even though that's the reason I'm mentioning it. But I love the fact that you have the buildup of that scene. Allison, Oscar tries to kiss Allison. He basically admits to her that he could be her new boyfriend because she had just broken up with her other boyfriend, or with her boyfriend, and so Oscar is like, hey, I'm your man, I can take care of you, babe, and all of a sudden she's like, see ya, I'm out of here, you can find your own way home. He's sitting on the ground at the backyard of this house, and
Elrod.
Yeah, that's what I love is he's like, hey, Mr. Elrod. And it's Michael standing there by a tree, and you can't really see him very well, but it's Michael. and he's like, he just says, did you ever, want a girl or love a girl so much, but you couldn't have her or whatever. He says something along those lines. And it's iconic because, you can draw the parallels between with Michael being after Lori, just that, what he says there. And then you have the whole scene where, it changes to where Michael, who he thinks is Mr. Elrod, basically disappears. He can't see him. And then the light goes out, the floodlight in the backyard goes out, and then it comes back on, and Michael is standing super close to him. And then it goes out again, and he freaking comes after him, and he tries to climb the fence. You get the great song of The Shape Hunts Allison from that movie. Probably outside of the theme, it's my favorite song out of that entire franchise.
By far.
And yeah, and he tries to climb up the fence, and he takes the rod through the jaw, which is just a great scene. So I was kind of waiting. I was waiting for that one to be on your list.
So Halloween 18 is it does have my favorite kill. But narrowing it down, that movie has some of my favorite kills in general. I forget if it's a security guard or a cop when the bus first crashes, who goes run right before getting murdered. I think that is bone chilling. But yeah, no, dude, the Oscar scene is incredible. He's a very likable character throughout the movie, sort of a comic relief. Very reminiscent to me of Shelley from Friday 3. I don't know if that was on purpose, but regardless, it was. He's one of the characters that felt like a very normal, somebody that would be in a high school group of friends. And I think it was really another gut-wrenching kill to see him go down in the way that he did. And of course, some of the lines there. Have you ever wanted a girl so bad but you just couldn't get her, or whatever he says?
Yeah.
So great. And that scene and my ultimate number one, both were kind of like oh shit moments for me in the theater, because it was like, now we're really seeing Michael get back into what he's doing. And I love anytime that somebody who is in costume gets killed in a Halloween movie. I think it's that much better too, because it sets the tone of something that couldn't happen in other, Friday the 13th or Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is definitively a Halloween kill.
For sure. Yeah, no, I agree, man. It's a fantastic scene. The music makes it that much better. And then obviously Allison, she comes back and she sees Oscar hanging there. That music, Allison hunts the shape, or I'm sorry, the shape hunts Allison starts, and it's a great scene, and absolutely love it. So, yeah. Well, so are we ready for? Well, I guess are you up? You're up, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you my favorite, and it's such a cheating moment, but I'm gonna do it anyways. My favorite kill / montage is that scene in Halloween 18, when Michael goes on this rampage, and it starts with the woman in the kitchen. He picks up the hammer and kills her. But I think for me, if I want to label it down to one single kill, it would be the unnamed woman in the window, where you see Michael's massive shadow come down the side of her house, and you see the window pop open, and you can tell she's on the phone, sort of hearing about Michael might be back in the neighborhood. She closes her blind, or she opens the blinds and looks out, and just in very classic 1978 vibes, just a quick knife through the head, and pulls it out and goes on with his day. I love the music in that scene. The shape returns, which is obviously done by John Carpenter and his son. I love that. That was because that movie was the first time I ever saw Michael in theaters. That scene really just means so much to me, and to me, nothing can top that.
It's an awesome scene, and it's not cheating at all because I think it's kind of all one extended long scene, and I agree right from the get go when Michael is walking outside and the trick or treaters run into him and they're like, "Sorry, Mister," and then they take off, and he's just it's almost like he's a hungry animal that needs to get fed, and he gets fed by killing people because he's looking for something to kill. I mean, that's exactly what he's doing. He grabs the hammer out of the shed, he walks into the house, and just the way that he walks into the kitchen and he turns and looks at the woman and then follows her, and then you don't see, it's obviously an off camera, off screen death, but clearly he bludgeons her to death with the hammer. And then you have, which we talked about in another episode or a previous episode, the whole baby crying scene where you're like, "Ooh, this shit's about to get real."
Yeah.
And he does it obviously, but then he moves back outside and he stabs that woman. It's a great scene. And the one thing that I didn't like about that was before they released the movie, they released that whole scene, and I don't know why they did that, because in my opinion, it's one of the best scenes out of that whole movie, because you're right. It's like Michael's back. He's here to kick ass. He's here to take names, and he's going to freaking start killing people. And they released that, and it was like, man, that should have been saved for the theater, for that first viewing. But dude, that is absolutely, it's a great scene and a great pick, and I can totally understand why that is your number one choice. So we're at my number one. We have actually already talked, or at least you have talked about this particular death. And I, where you had them together, I had them separate. You had Bob and Linda's deaths together. Bob made my list. Linda made my list, but I did them separately. But Linda's death scene, played by PJ Souls, that is my favorite kill from the entire franchise. There's just so much to it that it embodies Michael, that playfulness of, I'm going to wear this, this sheet and basically imitate this girl's boyfriend to where she falls in the sense that he's her boyfriend, and he's she's convinced that he's her boyfriend, and I think that it's so you put yourself in those shoes, and you wouldn't think that there was some killer in the house. You'd think that it was your boyfriend in this case messing with you, and she falls for that, and I love that so much. And then she obviously tries to get all flirty. She drops the sheets down, see anything you like. There's that whole thing. And then she realizes, like, oh, you're being an asshole, so I'm going to get up out of bed and I'm going to start getting dressed. And, that's when he comes up behind her. He strangles her. That's when she calls Lori. And that's when Lori's hearing, the struggle that's going on the phone. And she pulls, she's working over her head, and she pulls that sheet down. You see Michael. What always amazes me about that scene is how Michael's hair didn't get all like jacked up from the sheet getting pulled over. Like every time I see it, I'm like, man, how did they do that? That must have been just like really stuck down with spray paint or whatever it was. But you would have expected like the hair to get all messed up, and it doesn't. It stays picture, Michael Myers picture perfect. But yeah, he strangles her. She falls to the floor. He picks up the phone. He hears Lori, and it's just, I love that scene so much. It's just such a fantastic scene. That's obviously you are led to that scene via Bob's death, so they are very one and the same, or very close. But that is my favorite kill out of the entire franchise is Linda's death. I just think it's such a fantastic scene, so well done, so creative in the sense of what John Carpenter did with Michael putting on the bed sheet, and that playfulness, and not only putting on the bed sheet, but he put on Bob's glasses. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. he took it one step further. He took Bob's glasses off his face and put them over his own, his mask in the sheet, obviously. Just super, such a great scene. So that's our list. Whether you agree with it, disagree with it, whatever it might be, we'd obviously love to hear what you guys have as, in particular, what your favorite death scene is out of the entire franchise. So, in the comments section, hit us up. Let us know what you guys think. Do any of our favorites match up with yours? We definitely want to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're listening along on Spotify or Google, just send us a DM at our Instagram page as well. And yeah, no, absolutely. I want to hear everybody's top 10, or their just number one quintessential Michael Myers kill, because I think one of the great things about this franchise is I can understand why anybody would pick any one of the 10 that I did, any one of the 10 you did, or any of the other kills in the franchise. I think Michael Myers doesn't miss. He's
No.
always doing it well. I don't really have any kills that I'm thinking are too lackluster
Right.
in this series.
No,
So
there's none that are duds. I mean, you realistically could have picked any kill, and it could have made the top 10. And yeah, definitely want to hear from you guys out there. Well, let us know what your favorite kill was, and we maybe we'll do another round of this sometime. Our next 10 favorite. Who knows? But yeah, that was a lot of fun. It's obviously fun talking to you about this, and then hearing some of this, because like I said, we've not talked about this before. I'm sure we've talked about some of these death scenes, and just in conversation, but never in this ranking fashion. So it's a lot of fun. Thank you for putting up with our little technical snafu that we had tonight. For those of you who are watching this, we're still new at this thing and working through some of the bugs. And speaking of bugs, Austin is, he's not feeling great tonight. So thanks for being a trooper and coming on the show and obviously doing the deal. We do it. We're fans for the fans. We're doing it to make sure that we keep this content coming. So, and we also have next week, I do want to mention. So there's a new fan film that's out that is called Halloween Stocks. If you've not had an opportunity to see it yet, go to YouTube and type in Halloween Stocks. Watch it. I think it's 14, 15 minutes, something like that. It was so well done. So well done. And, Austin, I know you watched it a week or two ago. I've watched it a few times now. Just so well done. And we're going to have the director, Dominic Benoit. And it's Dominic, I'm probably going to mess this up. Cousinet, Benoit, and I apologize. We're going to have to get your name right. But Dominic is going to be on the show with us. He's the director of that, and he's going to share with us not only his love of Halloween, but really what was the driving factor behind him making his own fan film. So super excited to talk to him, and that's going to be on next week's episode. But if you're watching this, you like what you're seeing, please make sure you subscribe, hit the like, the follow, whatever it might be. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know if you like it, if there's something you'd like us to do different, a topic you'd like us to cover. But it's been a lot of fun. We're 5 episodes in. The train is going to keep rolling. We're having a lot of fun with this. We hope you guys are as well. So, yeah, man, that's a wrap for episode 5 of Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Sorry, my voice sounds like this. Like Blaine was saying, I'm dealing with a little bit of sickness. But Michael Jordan had his flu game, and I have this. So we push through and we make it happen. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like Blaine said, let us know how we're doing. Hit subscribe. Give us a follow. Anything you can do helps, and it's all free. And we thank you for the support that we've gotten thus far. And we can't wait to see you next week.
Absolutely. We'll be back with more content as usual. Thank you so much for listening, for watching Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers. I'm Blaine Duncan, joined by my brother, Austin Duncan. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.